Am I the jerk for defending myself against my grandmother, then leaving her alone? I, a 17-year-old female, began living with my 65-year-old grandmother after my mother passed away. My father did not want custody of me, so he signed over his parental rights to my grandmother. While living with her, we never got along well, mainly because of cleaning issues. My grandmother was a clean freak who wanted the house spotless at all times and expected me to do all the cleaning, regardless of my circumstances. Even if I was sick or had a busy schedule with school clubs, I was still expected to clean the entire house. This included tasks like washing her dishes, throwing away her trash, and picking up after her. I did not mind doing chores, especially when someone in the house was unable to, but my grandmother was capable of doing small chores like throwing away her own plate or picking up her dirty laundry. Despite this, she would often tell friends and family that she did all the cleaning and I did nothing. The main issue arose one night when she came into my room and asked if I was going to clean the kitchen, saying I needed to contribute because I lived there too. This upset me because I already did most of the cleaning. I cleaned the kitchen, living room, dining room, bathroom, basement, and sunroom. I even helped with yard work and anything else she asked. That night, I had not eaten dinner, so the kitchen mess was hers. I told her I did contribute and listed all the chores I did. She got angry, started yelling, and blamed her age for not being able to do chores. Sensing her anger, I asked her to leave me alone and close the door, but she refused. When she finally did, she opened it again seconds later, accused me of being disrespectful, and did something I cannot say on here or I will probably get banned. I defended myself, we yelled at each other, and I called my father to come pick me up in the morning. Hearing this, she accused me of lying and claimed she never did anything to me. The next morning, as my father and I were packing my things, I found her going through my belongings that I paid for with my money. I told her to stop, but she refused. When I insisted, she started throwing my things on the floor. I moved her away and told her to stop again. My dad intervened, and she stayed out of my way while I moved the rest of my things. After leaving, I felt guilty. Despite her actions, she is still my elder and my grandmother, and I wonder if I went too far. You behaved properly. 65 is definitely not too old to pick up after yourself. It's clear the family dynamic is off, and you deserve better. You asked politely, and she refused, so she got what she deserved. Sometimes people just need a reality check. Am I the jerk for opening up to my grandma instead of before my parents? I, a 17-year-old male, recently met my half-siblings for the first time. They are my father's children from his first marriage. They are in their 30s or 40s, married with children. Their mother died, my father remarried my mother, had my two sisters, who were 20 and 19 years old respectively, and then me. They saw my father and talked to him on the phone, but were never involved in our immediate family. They had contact with our grandmother, shared aunts, uncles, cousins, and honorary aunts and uncles. However, they were not a part of our lives and did not include us, except for my father, in theirs. I always knew they existed as my parents talked about them to us, but they were not around. It surprised us and felt kind of weird when my father said we would get to meet them. Our grandmother turned 85 a few weeks ago, and we were all present. My father made a big effort to introduce us during the party, and it was clear they did not want to be introduced. They moved away as soon as they could and talked to my father a few times. They even seemed to seek him out, but never looked happy to be near us or our mother. Their spouses and children also kept a distance. It was not super clear unless you were paying attention, but we did. My sisters had really wanted to get to know them but realized, as I did, that they did not want to talk to us. They also overheard them telling their children that we were just some people who were there, not even family. My sisters took it harder than I did. It bothered me a little afterward. They do not need to be okay with me, but it felt kind of hostile, honestly. I knew my parents had this idea that now we had all met, we would be more like an actual family. Only that is really not going to happen. I do not think we will ever have a conversation or interact more after that minor thing at the party. I was sad about that for my sisters who really did hope for a relationship with them. I only realized this when they heard we would get to meet them. It got to me a little and I talked to my grandmother. I told her I did not think I would ever see them again, and if I did not expect them to acknowledge my presence. I felt some hostility from them. My grandmother heard me out and gave me a hug. She also told me she would never be mad about it and that it was not my fault. She acknowledged that my parents were hoping for more. I told her I did not think it could happen, and I did not really want to pursue it if they felt hostile towards us or were unwilling to acknowledge us as more than just some people who were there, as they told their children. One of my uncles stopped by while I was with my grandmother. He heard what I said and spoke to my parents about it. They were very upset that I went to my grandmother instead of them. They told me I should talk to them about these feelings. I told them I couldn't, and that they would only ask me to stay open to things changing. If my half-siblings feel that way about us at their ages, more time will not change much. They said I did not need to burden my elderly grandmother with that either. Am I the asshole? Your actions don't make you a jerk. Being placed in such an awkward spot at a big social event is rough on anyone, let alone a 17-year-old. Facing it with courage and an open mind is truly admirable. Trusted adults become trusted by being trustworthy, and it's understandable to seek them out for sensitive conversations, especially given your dad's connection to the people involved. Your dad should have been supportive rather than getting mad at you for keeping him out of the loop. Opening up to others who aren't necessarily on the inside of it all, like your parents, is completely valid. Am I the jerk for refusing to give any of the money my late father gave me before his death to his widow and other children? I, a 33-year-old man, was estranged from my father for over a decade. It had been a long time coming when I finally decided to become estranged at age 20. I had already moved out when I was 17, and I had made sure to limit my contact with my father before ending all ties between us. A lot of this had to do with the decisions he made while my mother was terminally ill and after her death. He tried to sleep with my mother's sister while my mother was still alive. He yelled at my mother while she was sick for being so sick. He burned several family photos of us in the days after my mother died. He also sold my mother's easel, which she had most of her life and was sentimentally valuable to me and my aunts and uncles. I was 13 at the time. My dad ended up damaging a lot of my mother's belongings when he met his second wife and moved her in. To move her in, he moved my mother out. In the process, a lot of harm came to my mother's things. My aunts and uncles took them and stored them, and we went through them when I was 20. I was completely no contact with my dad until his death almost a year ago. Even when I was informed he had transferred a lot of money over to me and had put my name on the deed of a family vacation home he and my mother had owned prior to her death. That was the biggest chunk of everything he owned. He never told his wife, now widow. He also didn't own the house they were living in and that we all had lived in prior. It was his friend's house. I was never sure how it worked, but he never paid for it while I was living there. 3 years for me. After he died, a letter was sent to me where he told me he had given me all of that, so it was mine outright, and because he wanted to make up for his mistakes in a small way. His leaving me with so much meant there was basically nothing for his wife and the other children they had. Only what he had in joint accounts and no property. It was all legally binding. His widow attempted to sue for a fair share of my father's assets, but her case did not go far because it had been handled prior to his passing and was 100% legally mine. I didn't go to the funeral or anything, so I was surprised to hear from her. I still don't know where she got contact information for me or my father for that matter. She told me I should be looking after my family and should want better for the children she and my father shared at least. She made it clear she expected me to want a relationship. I told her I did not, and I did not consider her children my family because her late husband stopped being my family a long time ago. She said it wasn't fair that I could be so cold to my flesh and blood and that they got screwed over by their father and then by me. She said I owed them something. I told her I didn't. I ended the call and blocked her, but she reached out to me through social media and called me selfish and cruel and said I had no morals. Am I the asshole? After he died, a letter was sent explaining that he had given you everything to make up for his mistakes in a small way. He left you something that had nothing to do with his current widow, including the vacation property that originally belonged to your mom and dad. The person who had no morals was the lady who moved into a dying woman's home. She didn't seem to mind treating your mother's memory and you poorly, so this is just karma playing out. Am I the jerk for expecting to still be reimbursed after my sister backed out of a vacation due to her dog's death? My family consisting of myself, 35-year-old male, my sister's family, my sister is a 28-year-old female, and our parents were supposed to go on a beach house vacation 2 weeks ago. I organized the trip and ran the rental decision by my sister. This trip was supposed to be our treat to our parents, so they were not expected to pay. The expected cost of the rental was $10,000, so $5,000 each. I do make significantly more money than my sister. My sister has a dog, which she describes as her world. It predates even her husband in her life. It was 8 years old, and she had it since college when it was a puppy. It had a health issue about 6 weeks ago, and my sister spent $12,000 to try and save the dog. A little over a week before the vacation, the dog passed away. My sister was devastated and is still a wreck. She pulled out of the trip, citing the dog's death. My family and our parents still went on the trip. When my sister pulled out, it was too late to downsize to a cheaper house. Simply put, the trip was awesome for me. Post-trip, about a week ago, in talking with my sister, I told her I still expected her to pay the $5,000 for her share of the rental. It wasn't my fault she pulled out, and frankly, I didn't think she needed to cancel the whole trip over the dog. She flipped out on me, saying I was heartless and that making this request while she was grieving was mean. I tried to calmly explain that I wasn't about to bear the full cost of the house on my own. She says she shouldn't have to pay because she didn't go. She also said I could afford it. She was getting emotional and claimed I hated her dog. This is true, I didn't care for the dog, but I never brought that up at all during everything going on. She said she spent the vacation money on her dog. I said I would work with her on getting the money paid back. She called me an asshole and hung up. Since that conversation, I have texted her to check in, and I only asked about getting paid back once more. I'm trying to be respectful, but I also want my money. Am I the asshole? In my opinion, you have done nothing wrong here, but seriously, why do people book shared expenses before everyone has paid their share? It's understandable to be upset, but being insensitive about the dog's death wasn't cool. Even if she should still pay, handling it with some empathy might have helped. Sometimes it's not the request that's the problem, but the way it's communicated. Am I the jerk for how I responded to my friend criticizing my brother? My brother Tom has never had a relationship. He had a really bad stutter in his childhood and 20s and was so anxious and insecure about it that he wouldn't date. Nerves make stuttering worse. He is actually quite good-looking, keeps fit, has a good job, and is intelligent and funny. I have friends who insisted there must be something wrong with him until they met him. They said he's actually a great person, really attractive, and they've literally never seen this before. He just never really wanted a partner and is happy without one. If his soulmate landed right in front of him, he'd date them, but he has no motivation at all to find someone. I also have a friend, Pam. She really wants a partner and is dead set on wanting a marriage and kids. She was lamenting the lack of available men and said she'd date anyone. If anyone knows a single guy, she'd date them. I said I had 2 single brothers, but I was not sure how much they're up to dating at the moment. She scoffed at the idea, which was a bit confusing since she'd never met my brothers. I changed the subject because that was quite irritating. Fast forward 6 months, and I have about 10 of our friends over to our place. Pam came along, as did Tom. By this time, I had completely forgotten the earlier conversation. Tom stayed a couple of hours and then left. Pam, in front of the whole table, started rolling her eyes and saying things like, "I know why you invited Tom here. You're just desperate to set me up with him, so you figured you'd just spring it on me here, hoping I'll date your desperate brother. I see you. I get what you're doing." Considering Tom has social anxiety, it was a big deal for him to come that day to a table where he didn't really know anyone. Knowing how mortified he'd be to hear that, I saw red. I told her in front of everyone, "Tom is my brother. He will always have a place at my table. The only desperate one here is you, since you literally said 6 months ago that you'll date anyone. Tom ticks every single box you keep saying you want in a man, yet you're talking like has beneath you. I would never set you up with him because you're not his type, and he wouldn't like you. I've never even mentioned you to Tom because I'm not sure he'd reject you outright. So do not disrespect my brother in my own home." Pam left soon after. One of the people said she's actually interested in my other brother, and I said he won't be interested in her either once I tell him about her attitude toward Tom. So, am I the asshole because I embarrassed Pam in front of our friends? You are not in the wrong here. Good on you for sticking up for your brother. My guess is Pam's pathetic desperation is what drives everyone away. You're a good brother, and I'm sure Tom appreciates what you did. Am I the jerk for making my parent put my needs before my siblings? I am 18 years old and my sister is 20 years old. We are complete opposites. I am outgoing and positive, while she is more cynical and introverted. Despite that, we are pretty close. However, our relationship is strained. I have a lot of health issues, which has led to my parents being extra attentive and supportive towards me. This has caused resentment from my sister at times. My sister is fun to be around but can be quick to anger. She's into fitness and often has bruises but refuses to take painkillers because they interfere with some very optional supplements she takes. Every year we go to Comic-Con. I am a very big reader, so before the con started, I told my father the thing I wanted to do the absolute most was meet my favorite author and get her book signed. This was happening later on Sunday. We get to the signing on Sunday but end up near the back of the line. Halfway through the line, my sister comes up to us and says she is done. She had been telling us the last couple of days that her shoulder had been hurting, but again, refused to do anything about it. We told her to go sit at one of the tables on the other side of the pavilion where the signing was being held. A bit later, she texted my dad that she went to the car and asked if he could please come unlock it. They would not let people back in line once they left, and my dad told me he did not want to miss it. I had been telling him how much I wanted to meet this author for many months, so he asked her to just wait or come back and sit at the tables as he had told her to. About 45 minutes later, we were done. It was amazing, but it did run about 30 minutes over. We rushed back to the car. We all got in and drove home. We asked if she was okay, and she grumbled that she was fine. She did not take any pain medication or do anything else to feel better. The next day or two, she proceeded to ignore me whenever I talked to her. I just kind of rolled my eyes and said whatever until she started talking to me again. She does this relatively often. A few days later, all was back to normal and we were fine, or so I thought. A week later, my dad asked me to text her from his phone because mine was not working. I did, but then I saw the texts above. After we got home on Sunday, she had sent a barrage of texts calling him a terrible father and yelling at him for always putting my needs before hers. This made my blood boil. I do not understand why she complains about all this pain, but proceeds to be completely fine once we get home and refuses to do anything about it. Also, I stay hours and hours later than I would like at the con for her every year, but she could not manage 1 hour longer. One time so I could do the event I wanted to do more than anything. I stayed until 10 p.m. 2 days prior when I had wanted to leave at 5 p.m. so she could do her most anticipated panel. On Sunday she was done at 4 p.m. and we were done at 5 p.m. Honestly, I cannot bring myself to feel sorry for her, just my dad. But I do not know, am I the asshole? Honestly, it sounds like your sister might be feeling neglected, and this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Your parents probably unintentionally caused some resentment by prioritizing your needs due to your health, and now she feels deprioritized. It's important to acknowledge her feelings and maybe consider family therapy to address these issues. Everyone's entitled to their feelings, and recognizing the impact on her could help mend the relationship. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.